Hey friends, it's Mrs. G, and today we are going to start chapter 2 of Little Shaq Takes a Chance. We last left off, and Little Shaq was afraid to try sushi, and then he ended up regretting it in the end. So today, let's find out what happened in the chapter called In the Paint. Are you ready? In the Paint. At school the next day after recess, Little Shack's teacher, Miss Turpenny, set up two tables of art supplies. There were watercolor paints, crayons, colored pencils, and markers. She had also laid out paintbrushes, construction paper, and big slabs of clay. Little Shack took one look at the art supplies and went straight to his seat. Let's get started, class, said Miss Turpenny. The art projects you make this week will be displayed at the rec center as part of the school's spring art show. The whole room cheered, except for Little Shaq. The theme for this year's show is what we love, Mr. Penny continued. So your project should represent something that you care about. Barry raised his hand. Can it be about our family? He asked. Absolutely, said Miss Turpenny. What about our pets? Little Shack's friend Rosa Lindy asked. Little Shack listened as his classmates shouted out more questions. Okay, settle down, Mr. Penny said. Remember to wait until you're called upon. Walter Skipple raised his hand. Yes, Walter, she said. Does our favorite color count? He asked. Sure, she said. Be creative. Now let's make some art. Barry quickly grabbed a set of watercolor paints and a paintbrush. Little Shack shook his head. Painting seemed hard. Next to him, Rosa took a pack of markers and a handful of colored pencils. Little Shack shook his head again. He didn't know what to choose. Then he spied the crayons. Sometimes Tater made Little Shack color with him. Little Shack knew how to use crayons. He breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe this won't be so bad. Back at the table, Little Shack took out an orange crayon and drew a big circle. Then he colored it in. Rosa leaned over. I didn't know you loved oranges. I don't, said Little Shack. It's a basketball. Oh, said Rosa. Now I see it. Look at mine, said Aubrey Skipple. Walter's twin sister had sketched a picture of their dog Monty. No way, said Rosa. I'm doing a portrait of my cat Mittens. This is going to be so great for my newspaper article, said Aubrey. Your what? Asked Little Shack. I'm covering the art show for the Parkview Gazette, she said. My mom is letting me borrow her camera and everything. Little Shack glanced down at his drawing. Rosa was right. It did look like an orange. There was no way his art was good enough for the school newspaper. Little Shack crumpled up his drawing and marched back to the supply tables. What are you looking for? Mr. Penny asked. I don't know, said Little Shack. My picture didn't turn out so great. Why don't you give the watercolors a shot? She suggested. No thanks, he said. I don't like painting. Miss Turpenny raised her eyebrows. Have you ever tried it? Little Shack thought for a moment. No, he admitted. Miss Turpenny handed him a set of paints. If you don't like it, you can always try something else. Okay, she said. Little Shack nodded. Great, she said. Let's keep an open mind today. That's what my mom always says, he replied. She's a smart lady, said Miss Turpenny. Little Shack filled a plastic cup with water and started mixing the colors. Want any help? Asked Rosa. Sure, he said. I don't really know what to do. Here, let's practice together, Rosa replied. Rosa dipped a paintbrush into the purple paint and swirled the brush on the paper. She painted 3 squiggly lines. Now you try, she said. Little Shack gulped and picked up the paintbrush. He tried to do what Rosa had just showed him. First, dip the paintbrush, then squiggle, he said quietly. Little Shack painted 3 more lines on the paper. There, you got the hang of it, said Rosa. Little Shaq smiled and went to work. Using the black paint, he drew a large rectangle. Then he added a smaller rectangle inside. It's a backboard, Rosa said. Yep, I'm going to call this painting Slam Dunk. It's not done yet, though, said Little Shaq. I need to add a rim. With the orange watercolor paint, Little Shaq made a circle beneath the small rectangle. He mumbled. That doesn't look like a rim. It's too flat. Little Shaq sighed and put down his paintbrush. He glanced over at his friends. Rosa was using markers to make lots of little dots on the page, and Walter had painted two large squares in different shades of red and orange. Little Shaq never knew his friends were such good artists. He didn't think anybody would want to look at his painting. He put his elbows on the table and buried his head in his hands. The art show was only a few days away. What was Little Shaq going to do? Little Shaq, said Rosa, you're painting. Huh? He looked up. He had put his elbows right on top of the wet paint. Little Shaq closed his eyes tight. His painting was ruined. We can fix this, said Rosa. Forget it, Little Shaq said, standing up. I'm not making anything. After school, Little Shaq went to the rec center. He couldn't wait to play basketball. At the sound of Coach Mackin's whistle, Little Shaq ran down the court. I'm open, he yelled. Walter passed him the ball. Go for three, Little Shaq. Little Shaq dribbled the basketball up and down. As he looked at the rim, he thought about his painting. Little Shaq couldn't get art class off of his mind. Pass it, shouted Barry. Little Shaq threw the ball to Barry, who scored an easy layup. At the next time out, Little Shaq took a seat on the bench. Rosa climbed down from the bleachers. What's wrong, Little Shaq? She asked. I'm worried about my project for the art show, he told her. So? You're not a painter, she said. Big deal. Easy for you to say, he replied. Your project is really good. Yours will be too, said Rosa. Try the clay tomorrow. I bet you're a natural sculptor. You really think so? He asked. Rosa nodded as Coach Mackins blew the whistle. Tweet! The next day, Miss Turpenny passed out the class's art projects. Little Shaq looked down at his smeared painting and then up at the slab of clay. He was ready to give it a try. Little Shaq took the clay and rolled it back and forth in his hands, making a ball. The clay felt cool and smooth against his fingers. Suddenly, he had an idea. He didn't just love basketball, he loved playing it. Little Shaq knew exactly what he was going to make. For the rest of the week, Little Shaq worked on his sculpture every chance he got. At the end of each day, he covered it in cloth so no one could see it. On Thursday afternoon, Miss Turpenny asked everyone to turn in their final projects. Little Shaq took a deep breath and handed his in. So, was I right about the clay? Asked Rosa. Little Shaq smiled. We'll see, he answered. And that's the end of chapter 2. Next time, we will be reading chapter 3 and look out for the question that is going to be posted on Google Classroom for you guys to answer. All right, friends, until next time, bye.